So I'm really excited, if you can't tell, about this particular panel because we really wanted to focus on an aspect that's not really talked about in production, which is creative development, which is such an instrumental and important part of production, but not a lot of people know about what creative dev really is. So Mike Rosen is our Vice President of Creative Development at Prettybird and VENTURELAND. So I'll let him kind of talk a little bit about what that means, like what his role is, and then we can just talk about who Prettybird is, like what it is, and what VENTURELAND is, and then we'll show the sizzle to kind of bring it all full circle.
Hey everyone, thanks Shari. Yeah, excited to be talking with all you guys. So as Shari mentioned, I'm the VP of Development for Prettybird, and I'm also the Executive Creative Director for our sister company, VENTURELAND. So for those who don't know either or unfamiliar with either company, Prettybird is a production company. We're in our 15th year, and we produce content, primarily commercials and branded entertainment, as well as music videos. But we've done interactive content, experiential, you name it. And VENTURELAND is our sister company that we started up a few years ago for all of our original IP, essentially the creative studio wing of Prettybird. And so we develop and produce film and TV projects, both non-scripted and scripted, as well as podcasts. And as Executive Creative Director, I oversee the creative aspect in our Creative Services division, which functions much like an ad agency, where we will work directly with brands and develop creative content for them, whether it's just a one-off TV spot, a commercial, or a full 360 campaign, which can include, experiential components to it, out of home, you name it, or, maybe they just have, a cause that they're getting behind and they want to create some content. So I kind of oversee our entire creative department. I don't know, Shari, do you want me to, I can keep going in detail.
Oh yeah, that kind of
entails,
yeah, that kind of sets the tone for us. So he does it all. He's the Mike of all trades, I call him. So I do want to show the Prettybird sizzle before we get into the actual conversation. We'll actually be focusing on one specific spot today on the clock, which is a Ram spot, and was well received. And we'll get into why that spot is so special. But before we do that, I do want to show the sizzle so you can get a feel of the work that Prettybird has done.
I'd like to thank the most incredible team for directing such an incredible video.
Execution does not miss the promises that they make. It's going to happen for you.
I love that sizzle. I'm so biased, obviously. But that just gives you just a tip of the iceberg of kind of the work that Prettybird does. And so to that point, my first question, just to kick it off, is I want to talk a little bit about Prettybird and VENTURELAND's creative process. Can we talk about from the brand pitch all the way through the finished product very concisely? Could you explain what that creative process looks like in a general scale?
Yeah, for sure. So it's slightly different for each company. So I'll start with Prettybird. So as a production company, we have a roster of directors that we represent exclusively for advertising and music videos. So if there's a brand or an ad agency out there that wants to work with one of our directors, they have to go through us. They want to work with them. So we have, directors. I saw someone noted the Daniels. So we rep them. If you might know them from their film that they wrote and directed, Everything Everywhere All at Once. We have Melina Matsoukas, who's an incredible commercial music video director. She's also the showrunner on the HBO film Insecure. And so you name it, we've got a really diverse roster of filmmakers. So in terms of the process, typically how it goes is we will get in a script or boards from an ad agency. And so these are ad agencies that have been hired from a client, whether it's Nike or Apple or Coke, what have you. Some of these brands, will have one exclusive agency, an agency of record that they work with. Some might have multiple agencies. But either way, these agencies, they have a whole creative department, and they put together, concepts, again, whether it's for a one-off spot for a specific product or a whole campaign for the brand. So they will sell through an idea to their client. And that process, could take anywhere from weeks to a year before they actually get a creative concept signed off and approved. Once they do get that creative approved by their clients, again, the brand, the Nike, Apple, whoever, then they start a bidding process with production companies like Prettybird. Typically, that's a triple bid, meaning that they're sending it out to at least 3 companies. Every now and again, they might single bid a company, in which case they're just saying, like, this is who we want to work with, and we'll move forward with you guys. So when it does come into us, oftentimes they have a particular director that they're interested in. So they'll share the boards with us and whatever information they have, the shoot dates that they want to hit, if there's a budget that they're able to share with us, which director that they're interested in. And then, of course, they'll share the creative with us. We'll then take a look at that creative and see if it's something that we like. From time to time, there's creative comes in and just might not be, the right fit for that particular director. Maybe the money just isn't going to work out, but more often than not, like, we're looking at it, from a creative standpoint, like, is it great creative, and is it something like we feel like we can pull off, and is it also a right fit for that director? Are they even available? Sometimes our directors, are off, shooting other jobs, whether it's something through us or another film or TV show, and depending on when that job has to deliver, it might conflict. But assuming it doesn't conflict, we like the creative, we feel like the money is going to work, we'll share it with that director just to make sure that it's something that they really respond to. If it is, then we'll engage on that job. And so what happens next is we'll set up a first call with the agency. And typically that's with the creative team that wrote that concept. The producer from the agency side will be on as well. And it's an opportunity for the creatives to walk the director through what their vision is for that creative concept. There might be some backstory, like how we got to where it is, some information on the product itself. Oftentimes they might give the director some parameters, some guardrails, for when they go back and start their treatment process, which I'll get into a second, just making sure, like, okay, don't go down this lane. The client definitely doesn't want to go there with it. Let's focus here. This is what we're looking for. It's also, an opportunity for the director to ask any questions. Again, just they might want to know, like, is there any anything we should be aware of in terms of, like, which direction we don't want to go to, where we should be focused on. Sometimes the director might already have some ideas that they want to soft pitch the agency, just to make sure, like, they don't go in a direction that they're not going to like. But more often than not, it's an opportunity for the director to just ask any questions that they might have, regarding the creative, and for the agency to kind of walk them through it. Once we complete that call, then we go into the treatment process, which is kind of where my department comes in. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what a director's treatment is, it's essentially, a document, that's outlining the director's vision for how they see that spot coming to life. And, not all treatments are the same, but it really is, written in the first person. We'll usually share a PDF, or more frequently these days, we're doing hosted treatments with animated GIFs and everything. So it's a written document from the director themselves, along with a lot of visuals, and we put together like a really beautiful presentation. But it's kind of outlining things like, what's the tone of the piece? How does the director envision the tone? If it's a comedy spot, like, is it, deadpan comedy? Is it a little bit more slapstick? We'll talk about the visual style. What is the lighting and the look of the film look like? Is it a spot where the director wants to, incorporate some really dynamic camera work, or some dynamic transitions? What does that look like? When do those come into play in the spot? We'll talk about casting and performances. What kind of actors does the director, look for, and what does that process look like in terms of like getting the performances that they want to get? They might kind of create, again, depending on the spot, like every creative is a little different. They might even come up with some backstories on the characters that are in the spot, whether or not it makes it into the spot itself. Just it shows the agency that the director's really putting in a lot of thought into who the characters are, and it might inform like some of the performances. And then more often than not, like we'll actually do a script walkthrough. But we're not simply copying and pasting the script that the agency sent to us, because they wrote it, they kind of know what the idea is. But this is an opportunity for the director to kind of really paint a really vivid picture, for the reader, the client, and the agency, how they're taking that idea and elevating it and really bringing it to life. And that can include, giving like really particular details on, what does the location look like? What is the lighting like? What is the camera doing in this particular moment? And we'll literally do like a shot for shot breakdown. Okay, we open on this character in this scene, the camera pushes in on them, much like, like you would read for like a feature length script. Sometimes, we might completely change some of the scenes that the agency has come up with, swapping out one scene for a new scene, or it might just be, coming up with like all dialogue. Especially we do that, especially if it's a comedy dialogue spot, just kind of show like how we're going to make it even funnier, and just show like, okay, these are all the different lines, we're going to cover on the day of. Typically you want to cover more than, what's scripted on the paper. So I will work with, so that's basically what we put into the treatment. So once we go into this process, typically you have about a week or so to come up with the treatment. Sometimes, more and more these days, that turnaround time is getting more and more compressed. Sometimes like we're in scramble mode because we only have like a day or two to put it together. Sometimes like we get lucky and you have like 2 weeks. So it varies, but those are the certain, the general sections and topics, that goes into the treatment. It might also include, a discussion on like the music, if there's what the vibe is that the director is picturing. We might include like specific tracks that they think would be a good vibe, and talking about the sound design and any sort of like production logistics that might be relevant for that job. So once we get into this process, I'll work directly with the directors on making sure we execute, their vision in creating these treatments. And, every director is different when it comes to this process. Some are super hands-on. They're really involved in the writing process. They might write the treatment themselves, or more often than not these days, we'll bring on a writer, a freelance treatment writer to work with, in which case, we'll get on a call with the writer, they'll have all the materials, we'll brief them. And, that's when the director is really kind of giving them their ideas and, on what their approach is. And then in parallel with that, we have a whole team here, in-house team in our development division that is pulling visual references. That could be, movie stills or stills from other spots or music videos or still photography. It can include, pulling video clips, creating GIFs for particular moments. Oftentimes, if it's, there's some dynamic camera moves or transitions, it's kind of, for some people, it's kind of hard to visualize that just by reading it or seeing a still image. So you want to show something in motion, so again, it's really just giving the reader and the client just a really clear idea of like how the director sees these ideas coming to life. So we'll put all this together. And while we're doing that, we're also we have our bidding producers and our production department putting together their bid, the budget. And that budget and the treatment, have to mirror each other, one for one. So while we're writing it out, we're making sure that everything that we're putting into the written treatment, aligns with the budget, and, how we're approaching it. Are we shooting on location or are we building sets? So kind of explaining some of those things. And then, so I'll kind of work with the writer and director. Oftentimes, like I'm helping the director come up with some new ideas. And we'll put all these together. And finally, once the director signs off on the treatment and our EPs sign off on the treatment, then we'll send it off to the agency for them to review. Then we'll hop on another call. This time it's the director walking the agency through their vision and kind of walking them through their treatment, how they want to execute it, talking about some of the ideas. The agency might have some questions, maybe things that we didn't address or things that weren't clear. And sometimes they'll have some tweaks that they might ask the director to make. And that's usually just to kind of help sell the idea through to their client. Like there might be it might be like a specific word that, a client might be sensitive to. So we'll kind of then go back and address any notes that they might have. And, we'll submit our budget. And then at that point, it's kind of in the agency's hand. They'll go back to their client. Sometimes they'll go back with the creative recommend, meaning, they have a particular director and company that they're recommending to their client to move forward with. The client can still choose another production company director. It's ultimately their call. But sometimes the agencies just kind of share, all three concepts and let the client choose. But at that point, then it's in their hands and we'll find out whether or not we get the job or not. So that's kind of the very high level top line view of how it works on the Prettybird side.
And I'm going to sidebar really, really quickly because I don't want to forget to ask this question. And then we'll get into the specific spot that we're going to show today. But in your department of creative development, because I do want to make sure that for everyone on this call that they understand what career paths are involved in everything that Mike just explained, because there's more to production than just being a producer or director. There's so many roles that are involved. But in your particular department, just so you can start to think about like the skills that could transfer over and be useful in creative development, like what types of roles do you generally hire for, or what types of roles are like in-house at Prettybird that make up your department?
Yeah, so I mean, our department has certainly like grown over the years. It wasn't always the size that it is currently. So again, as VP of development, I'm kind of overseeing the entire division. And then I also have an associate creative director who's also just focused mostly on the Prettybird side of things for our treatments. And then we also have, a team. We have 4 image researchers and designers. And then I also have a development coordinator. And the researchers and designers, I'm very fortunate. We have an amazing in-house team here. And not every company has a division that's structured this way. Some companies, might just have like a coordinator type position and they, outsource to freelancers for everything. But we have found that having an in-house team is really, it's just much more efficient and it just allows us to scale up the amount of jobs that we're bidding on concurrently. But the research and designers, like they're literally, most of their day-to-day is they're the ones that are pulling most of the image research. Again, whether it's stills or spots, and we have, all sorts of sources that we're pulling from. And they're also incredible designers, and they're the ones largely that are putting together these pitch decks and presentations, which could also include just company decks and sales decks. It's not just the commercial and music video treatments that we bid on. Anything visual and creative that goes out, our team is involved in working on those.
Thank you. And
All right, do you want me to talk about like the VENTURELAND process as well? Because that's a little different.
yeah, very briefly, because I do want to I know we have like 40 minutes. Yes.
Right. Okay. So for VENTURELAND, again, whereas Prettybird, when we get a job in, an agency has already sold that concept through to a client. VENTURELAND, again, we are a creative studio. We're not an ad agency, but a lot of the work that we do on the creative services side functions very much like an ad agency would. So we will oftentimes work directly with the brand. We'll get a brief in from them for a particular project that they want to create some creative content around. Again, it could be just one TV spot or a full 360 campaign. Depending on what it is, sometimes I will then take that brief and we'll kind of internally, myself and one of the executive producers, we'll kind of figure out, we'll tap into our Prettybird roster of directors because they're amazing filmmakers and storytellers and idea generators. So we'll kind of think about who we think is appropriate and might be interested in this particular brief. And then we'll send them the brief and see if they're interested. And, sometimes we might have like 2 or 3 or upwards of like 7 or 8 directors like pitching ideas. And I'll work with them again, on developing their concepts. And then we'll pitch that to the client and see if any of those ideas kind of rise to the top and the client wants to move forward with any. Other times, if it's more of a traditional 360 campaign, I'll actually we'll kind of create these bespoke teams depending on the brief and client, and I'll hire out, freelance creatives. Typically, they have a traditional ad agency background. So those can be other creative directors or copywriters and art directors. Sometimes we might just have one team. Other times, depending on the scale of the job, we might actually bring on multiple teams and have them working in parallel. And again, we'll come up with the scripts and then pitch those to the client. And, if we're lucky, they will, sign off on one of those ideas, and then we get to produce it.
So before we show the RAM spot, I love that Mike went into detail about both creative processes and also the roles that are involved, because, as you start to think about your own career and what you want to do and where you want to work and what kind of culture you want to work in, it's just important to know like everything that's possible, like what production consists of outside of just producing and directing, which is great. But there's so much, like you said, like creative development involved in this process of what we see in campaigns and media, entertainment, and TV, and et cetera. So throughout this conversation, just start to think about like how your own creative skills will transfer into a role like this or a company like this. Okay. So now for the fun part, we're going to show a spot. I'll let the spot speak for itself, and then Mike's going to talk about what went into it, but it's easily one of the most unique spots I think we've done. And I'll let Mike speak to that, but it is so incredible. It's the on the clock RAM spot. And then we're going to talk about like what went into it, the creative process for this spot specifically, and what makes it so unique. Let's do it.
Everything has changed. Everyone wants what we have. We have to protect what's ours. The only question is, are you in?
Suppose the phrase "quit while you're ahead" doesn't apply here.
Now, why would we do that?
I'll assemble the crew, make sure we have the right fit.
So as you can clearly see, the result is 23/20. Any questions?
I have one. You want to drive or should I? Oh, shit.
You remember the last time I said just trust me?
Yeah, I woke up passed out in Cabo.
No, the time before that.
We all made history.
Damn right we did. Staff, need you on the ground calling the shots. Van, well, I need you in the van. Catch all communication. AD, I need you laser focused on the one thing you do best, complex data analytics. Nick, you're on recon.
I got eyes all around.
Over 1 million people a week visit Las Vegas. Except for next week, that number doubles because of one event.
The draft.
Celine Dion.
You didn't just say Celine Dion, did you? Did you just say that?
The Rams are on the clock.
Yellow 25, you're on the move.
Find your angle and don't hesitate.
I never hesitate. Target inbound. I see the case.
There's no room for error on this one. I'm the only one that understands how real this is. We gotta do this now.
Leslie and Sean McVay, they throwing caution to the wind.
Too many imposters try to do what we do. Nobody does what we do.
They know. It gotta be now.
Kill, kill, kill.
Cover's blown, they know.
Get out now.
Rams are gonna bomb this draft. Can't do those kind of things.
Traded all their picks away.
We got 10 seconds left. We got this, right? Tell me we're good.
Tony, Sean, you're gonna wanna see this.
That is not McVay's strength.
Sean McVay's supposed to be boy genius.
The house always wins.
I did what no one said we could.
Les, gotta go now.
The Los Angeles Rams select.
We're gonna steal the draft.
So yeah, I've seen this spot like 17 million times, and every time I'm like, because it's so good, right? And somebody said that they saw this commercial, but I'll let Mike talk about it. But I think the most unique thing about it is that you feel like it's teeing up for a movie when this is just a spot. So I want to talk about the creative process that went into this. Paul Hunter, who is the co-founder of Prettybird and a director, a very talented director, directed this spot. And I just want you to, like, there's so much we could say, right? But let's start at the beginning. Like, how did this idea, this concept, how was it born? What went into it? What were the key players involved? Just drop the gems, Mike, drop the gems. We're all dying to know, myself.
So we developed and shot this spot last year, at the beginning of last year, but we first started talking to the Rams the previous year because they came to us through VENTURELAND with the project to pitch on doing one of their hype films, which is the films that they play in the stadium when all the players come out. So I worked on coming up with an idea that we pitched them. We ultimately did not get that job, but we obviously made a good enough impression with them that they came back to us for this project. And when they came to us, there wasn't much of an idea. They wanted to do something really buzzworthy for the NFL draft. And this was all happening like during the regular season while the season was going on. And, I don't want to get too in the weeds especially for those who don't follow football and especially, let alone the Rams, but one of the things that they do differently recently, and especially 2 years ago, the year when they won the Super Bowl, was they traded away a lot of their future draft picks, their high draft picks, so that they can get veteran players to make an immediate impact. They were going all in on that season to win the Super Bowl, and they knew by doing, which is what most teams don't do. They're building for the future, and so they also knew by doing that when the draft came around, they weren't really going to be in the media conversations because they didn't have a high draft pick. But being the Rams, being in LA, they wanted to kind of plant a flag in the ground. And, if anyone should be doing like the best sports marketing, it should be the Rams. They're in Hollywood, flashy team, so they really wanted to kind of do something big and buzzworthy. But, so the idea when it first came to us was literally just, we want to create a mock trailer, movie trailer for a heist film, because it's all centered around this idea of stealing the draft. And in the sports world, what that means is when you don't have high draft picks, you're really making some incredible strategy in getting these incredible players, in the later rounds, that end up being these great players that have kind of gone under the radar. And the Rams, more so than most teams, have been really successful with that. And again, knowing that they traded all the way their future players, they knew going into this next draft, that they were going to have to steal the draft once again and really find those hidden gems, in the later rounds. So it was kind of this idea, just steal the draft. Let's come up with create a trailer around a heist film. So that was literally, there was no script, there was nothing. It was literally just, that was it, a heist film. So from that point, and it was super exciting for us sports fans. I'm born and raised in LA, huge Rams fans. So it was just a really cool project from the get-go. So once we got that brief, I started working with the writer on developing the script, and we literally looked at every heist film, different genres. We looked at all the Ocean's 11 films because we wanted something, also I should just back up. Part of the brief was, when people watch this, we wanted them to think that they were actually watching a trailer for a legit film. We didn't want right out of the gate for them to realize that it was for the Rams and the draft, and we wanted to take it completely seriously. So we looked at every heist film, Ocean's 11, but also like action films and thrillers, like the Mission Impossible films, Christopher Nolan films like Tenet and Inception, and Widows, and even smaller indie films like American Animals. And we looked at all those trailers and just kind of broke down how they were structured and just looked at all the different tropes. There's always okay, there's some sort of problem that's, that, and then, a plan is devised, there's the mastermind who puts the plan together, and then a team is assembled, and then the plan is executed, but problems arise. But then also looking at the characters themselves. Again, you have the team leaders, the George Clooney's and Brad Pitt's, then you have the muscle, or the hacker, so we kind of wanted to lean into all these tropes, but also have some fun because we knew we were going to be featuring a lot of the Rams players. So some of them, we looked at, okay, who are some of the characters that the synonymous characters that you think of, in the heist films, and then how do we best match those characters with, with the Rams players, so Jalen Ramsey is one of their star cornerbacks. He plays defense. So we had him, intercepting communications, security and communications. But we were also kind of having some fun with it and also playing against expectations too. So Aaron Donald, who's, one of the best defensive ends in the league. I mean, he's like a human Incredible Hulk. I mean, just massive, massive dude. You would think he would be the muscle, but instead we kind of flipped it and just had some fun. And he was the computer expert. He was the one at the beginning teaching the computer programming class. So, we had fun kind of playing with some of those tropes. But then, yeah, so I worked with the writer on creating this script. And we also brought on, another director of ours on the Prettybird roster, Susanna Fogel. She's an incredible director, writer, producer. She does a lot of comedy films. So we also brought her on to do a comedy pass, just to kind of punch up the dialogue. Because again, we wanted it to be dramatic and intense and cool and super stylish visually, but we also wanted it to be entertaining and have some fun. So we brought her on to help with some of the dialogue. She came up with the Celine Dion joke, which so many people love. But then, yeah, so then we kind of came up with this script and put together this, incredible presentation. And, we pitched it to the Rams, and, we were bidding against two other incredible companies and their filmmakers. But ultimately we got the job. And right away they wanted to work with Paul Hunter, and we were fortunate enough that he was available and excited to work on this job, and he and I've worked together like my entire career. So it's kind of exciting to kind of work hand in hand with him on this. And so the creative development was done through VENTURELAND, but Prettybird produced the spot itself, which again is one of the unique things about VENTURELAND. We have this partnership with Prettybird as a sister company of theirs. And then we also, once we went into production, it was a 4-day shoot. We had a 5th day, some pickup shots for some of the driving footage. We were really fortunate to get Bob Richardson to come on as DP cinematographer. He's a 3-time Academy Award winner. He does all of Tarantino's films, and he's done a lot of Scorsese's films. So we knew it was going to look incredible. And one of the things also from the very beginning, I should just back up, when we were talking with the Rams was, we wanted to get some A-list talent to play the roles of Coach McVay, Les Snead, the GM, Raheem Mostert, the defensive coordinator, and Stan Kroenke, the owner of the Rams. So that was a whole process in and of itself before we even went into production. We were talking, with a lot of the big talent agencies, CAA, WME, to see who would be interested and available, and obviously, work within the budget. And that was a whole process going back and forth. And ultimately, as you saw, we fortunate to get Dennis Quaid, who played Stan Kroenke, the owner, Scott Eastwood, Clint Eastwood's son, who's also an actor. He played Coach McVay. Tyrese played Raheem Mostert, and Josh Holloway, who you may or may not know from Lost and Yellowstone. He was Les Snead, the GM. So, it was just a really, really fun shoot. It was challenging because we had so many setups to shoot, even in a 4 days. Like it probably, should have been a 7-day shoot, but we were able to squeeze it all into 4 with a 5th day. Yeah, that's how it went down.
And so they actually did a case study video, which we're going to show you, because my next question is really, what kind of response did it receive? Because I'm just curious, like, how do people receive this? Because it's really never been done before, and it's so unique. So we do want to show that case study video to give you a little bit more BTS and insight into how it was received.
Last season, the Los Angeles Rams went against conventional football wisdom.
You gotta go big or go home. You've got to compete, make your mark.
They traded away all of their future draft picks to acquire veteran players.
The Rams had no first-round picks.
They don't own a pick inside the top 100.
They have nothing.
Don't blow this.
They were questioned.
You cannot have that be the setup for the draft.
And criticized.
So Rams are going to bomb this draft.
They traded all their picks away.
Rams, F on their draft grade already. F already? F.
They answered by winning the Super Bowl.
The Los Angeles Rams are world champions!
They held the most coveted trophy in their sport, but as they entered the 2022 NFL Draft, they had no first-round picks, leaving them out of the media coverage and all of the intrigue and drama that surround the event. In typical Rams fashion, they went against the grain, again, and decided to create their own drama around the draft. Well, more of an action heist drama, to be specific.
We're gonna steal the draft.
This is On the Clock.
Suppose the phrase "quit while you're ahead" doesn't apply here.
Now, why would we do that?
A celebrity-filled, action-packed trailer with all of the trappings of a Hollywood blockbuster.
They have Dennis Quaid, Scott Eastwood, Tyrese, Josh Holloway.
Every scene is a crafted homage to the heist film genre.
We're on recon.
I got eyes all around.
Anything that felt inauthentic or too much like a commercial would quickly be overlooked by a very savvy audience. This had to be a misdirect at the highest level.
Find your angle and don't hesitate.
So, did it work?
It is spectacular.
I loved it. Smooth.
I actually want to see the movie.
On the Clock piled up $3 million in earned media with a 92% positive fan reaction.
They dropped one of the coolest hype videos that I have ever seen.
Total impressions, 622 million in 1 week.
I rewatched it too many times to count.
This video went viral.
Huge.
Even the king himself decided it was worthy of sharing.
Never been more blown away by something a team has put together.
They are so far ahead of everybody else.
The house always wins.
This is how the Los Angeles Rams stole the 2022 NFL Draft. It stole the hearts of fans all over the country.
1 million people a week visit Las Vegas because of one event.
Celine Dion.
You didn't just say Celine Dion, did you?
So much we could say, right? But is there anything else that you want to add that everyone should know before we move on? So I do want to talk about just Prettybird's like selection process for directors. I know that's always a question, like how directors are selected, how can you be a part of this type of community or company or ecosystem? But before we get into that, any like last minute notes? I know this could be a whole session in itself, but just anything else that you want to add about working on this spot and how it was received?
I mean, it was a dream project. I mean, just to be able to work with an organization like the Rams, you know, who I'm already like, you know, my favorite team is someone born and raised from LA, but you know, even for them, like this was kind of a unicorn project. It's not something that most teams, sports organizations would ever do as part of their marketing content, let alone the Rams. You know, it's kind of a once a year, if that, sort of project. So it was just a really exciting process, and it was just, you know, great to work with them. I mean, the script that we wrote, you know, ultimately didn't really go through that many changes once they awarded us the job. There were some scenes we were ultimately had to cut just for budget and, you know, logistical purposes, just in terms of the amount of days that we had to shoot in, the amount of setups. But for the most part, like what we pitched them is what we shot. So which was also pretty cool. And again, just to be able to work with Paul and Bob Richardson and everyone and have all the players involved, and they were just super excited, and everyone was on board and wanted to be a part of it because they knew it was something different. And but yeah, it was just a really great process. And I can't say every project will be like this one. You know, but hopefully we'll see some more.
Go down in the books. Also, I should have noted this 85 years ago, but we will have a Q&A for Mike at the end. So please save your questions. You will be DMing me or PMing me directly with your question, and I will ask it for you just to make sure we get through as many as possible. So that'll be in a few minutes. But before we get to the Q&A portion, I do want to switch gears a little bit, because obviously Pipelines works with a lot of up-and-coming talent or talent who are aspiring directors or producers or creative directors, et cetera. So I specifically want to talk about, you know, Prettybird, you know, and VENTURELAND, but Prettybird, if they're on this call and they're an aspiring director and they want to get into this line of work in any capacity, I do want to talk about how, when we say roster, like, you know, you talk about leaning into our roster of directors. And if you don't know, we have a very, like Mike said, a very diverse roster. You can check it out on the website and look at their work. And I pride Prettybird on that because we are a minority owned production company, and we do have one of the most diverse directorial rosters there is. So I do think that's worth mentioning. So with that, as you start to think about if you want to be a signed director or a freelance director, because those are two different paths, how does Prettybird select their directors? Like what kind of advice would you give an aspiring director to stand out, or like what kind of skills and qualities should they have if they really want to do groundbreaking work like this or work for a future forward company? What should they be thinking about? What qualities should they have? How do they make themselves more marketable?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, there's no like, you know, book to follow, you know, on how to get signed and what to do as a director. I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, like when we're, you know, we get directors, you know, sending us their reels every day, or our sales reps sending us people. So we are constantly looking at directors' reels. And although like we have, our roster has grown exponentially like over the years, you know, we're always looking for new filmmakers, and at the end of the day, you know, we want people that, you know, that that have a strong point of view, a unique point of view, that kind of have something to say, you know, and whether it's, you know, what it is they're saying or how it is they're saying, that just feels unique and stand out. And again, there's, you know, it's kind of impossible to say, you know, what that is, what that looks like. You kind of know it when you see it. And, you know, everyone's different. You know, we've signed, you know, like Shari was saying, you know, we really, you know, one of the things we're proudest of is, you know, how diverse our roster is, you know, not just in the types of work that we produce, but the filmmakers themselves. You know, whereas a lot of production companies, will only sign more established directors that have been around for a while. It was always in our DNA. And, when we started the company, to look for those rising voices, those next, who's going to be the next Spike Jonze or Spike Lee, or the next Paul Hunter and Michel Gondry. We wanted to find that young talent and develop them. So filmmakers like the Daniels, we signed them like straight out of college. Off of a music video, I'm sure they spent like $20 on, that they produced themselves. I think our receptionist at the time spotted it, and we just saw something just truly original in their work, and we signed them, and look at what they're doing now. So it's, again, it could be based literally on, one short film that we saw that we were just blown away by. And that's, whether or not it's getting, going the festival circuit, and getting incredible publicity, or just something we just happen to stumble on, or someone sends us. It could be, as simple as that, a short film, or obviously, if someone has a more extensive body of work, we look at that. And also how it kind of matches up with our current roster. Typically we don't have filmmakers bid against one another. And so, is that person's reel something that's filling, a white space on a roster? Is it, or sometimes we have to consider like, all right, we just signed this one director, but we're looking at this other director. They've got an incredible reel, but it feels very similar to the director that we just signed, who we've committed to committing to building to. So maybe it doesn't make sense because, now there might be too many mouths to feed, but it might be like, but if maybe there's a space, where we need like, we're looking for someone with a little bit more VFX on their reel, or a little bit more comedy dialogue or storytelling, so those are the things that we kind of look at. But we're also very strategic about, when we bring on directors, again, we'll, if there's someone who, we're kind of considering, and again, it could be someone that has just sent us a cold email, that someone in the company is kind of sparked to, we'll share internally amongst all the different producers and see if anyone else likes the reel and thinks they have potential. And sometimes we'll get reels sent from our sales reps. And likewise, if there is serious consideration, we will also share it with our reps. They're the ones who are going out there selling us as a company and selling the directors to the agencies and clients, and we want to get their reaction. Is that filmmaker someone that they think, they can go out and sell? If they do, great, that's, then gives us, it's more likely we'll sign them. If they feel like it's going to be a stretch, then, maybe we don't ultimately sign them, and maybe we, but if we feel like they have a lot of potential, we might back pocket them, which means, we're not officially signing that director. They're not going on the website, but every now and again, some boards might come in that might not be right, maybe for whatever reason, budget, schedule, for any of the directors on the roster, but maybe for someone that we've been talking to, and, we'll try and put them up for it. And sometimes we've had luck actually getting filmmakers jobs that way and slowly building their reel. But it's also kind of like a first date with us. We also want to see, like, how are they to work with? How are they, are they good working with clients? Are they a good person? What's their character like? So that, I hope that answers the question. Again, there's no like one specific thing we're always looking for. But again, at the end of the day, we're looking for people, that just have a strong, unique point of view, that we feel like has a strong voice, that should and could be heard.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna end this with questions. They've already started coming in, and I'll try and get through as many as possible because they're all great questions. But we'll start from Ryan. Do you mostly have DPs as part of the roster or freelance? What's the process of getting hired on a project as a DP?
Cool, good question. So our roster is just directors. There are a couple directors who are also DPs, but we don't represent them as a DP. You know, we only rep directors. So once a job is awarded, then, you know, we'll put together a freelance crew. So we'll start by hiring a freelance line producer. So they're overseeing the kind of day-to-day logistics of that particular project. Our in-house EPs are kind of overseeing that job from a whole and making sure like the agency and client, everyone is happy and everything's going smoothly. So we'll hire a freelance line producer, and they have like their team, which can include like production supervisor, coordinator, PAs. And then the director, then we'll hire a freelance, all the key personnel for the production crew. So we'll hire a DP, you know, and oftentimes, you know, the director will have, you know, a DP in mind or a couple DPs. So we'll check to make sure that they're available and even want to do it. So sometimes like we have to make inquiries into, you know, 4, 5, 6, however many DPs, you know, because they might not even be available, the ones that we want to get. But we'll do that, you know, for the DPs, production designers, you know, wardrobe stylists, costume designers. Again, you know, every job's different, but, you know, obviously we'll have those key crew members, you know, for each job.
I'm going to ask the next question, but it's more of an idea. But will there be any workshops on how we as creatives can go about creating our own director's treatments? And I think you just gave us an idea for another panel. I think we've never done it before, but if there's enough interest, I definitely think it's worth, you know, I can get with Haley, but I think you should reach out to Haley if it's something that you're interested in. If we have enough people that are interested in doing a session dedicated to how to build an effective creative treatment.
Yeah.
I'm sure Mike would love to be down for that. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's no, you know, right or wrong way to do a treatment. And like every director, you know, has their own personal preferences, you know, for what they would like their treatments to look and sound like. But, you know, and we're always trying to come up with, you know, cool and new innovative ways to present those treatments, you know, so, but yeah, I'm happy to do a workshop in the future and share some sample treatments so you guys can see what they look and sound like.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I'm probably moderated, but I actually want to learn too, so.
Well, it's also like, you know, it's also, I should say, you know, as a career path, you know, there's, you know, treatment writers, you know, obviously there's like tons of writers out there in the world, but commercial and music video treatment writing is a very niche and specific type of writing. And, you know, it's a very specific type of writing because you need to know like kind of how to speak the language of production, but also, you know, be an idea generator because, you know, the directors oftentimes lean on the treatment writers, you know, to help kind of develop and come up with some ideas, you know, and there are agencies out there that specific agencies that represent treatment writers and image researchers and designers. So while we have an in-house team, at least on the research and design side, you know, when it's super busy or sometimes directors might have a particular researcher or designer that they like to work with, you know, we'll hire freelance researchers, you know, and people can make, you know, a really great career out of doing that. So in addition to like working on production, you know, whether in-house or, you know, freelance as like a production supervisor or line producer, you know, that's another job opportunity, career path that, you know, a lot of people don't even know exist.
And I don't know if Mike didn't mention this, but Mike, I mean, I guess I would consider you like a day one when it comes to Prettybird. Like you've been around since the early days of since Prettybird's inception. So I want to throw that out there. So to this next question, this person is asking, what was it like attaining and working with your very first clients? Maybe speak to like Prettybird's earlier days, like what kind of clients they had, what was it like attaining them?
Yeah, I mean, technically, I guess I'm considered employee number one. So the real early days, I mean, it was literally just like me, Paul Hunter, one of the co-founders, Kirsten Emhoff, the other co-founder, producer, and I think maybe like 2 or 3 other directors. And, you know, there were a couple other staff members, but it was really tiny. I mean, we were literally working out of Kirsten's house for the first few months. And, we were, I remember very early on, like there was a job that Kirsten got in. I don't even remember who the client was, but we didn't even have a name for the company yet. And they literally couldn't award us a job until we had an official name, that we could put on a contract. So like it was literally scrambling to come up with a name before we even got that first job. But yeah, I mean, it was exciting. I mean, we were fortunate, with those few directors that we had to, get those early commercials. I think, we might have done one for Audi, and some other beauty products, I think for Rexona, were some of the earliest jobs that we got. But and also at the time, like because there were so few of us, we were all wearing a lot of hats. So, I was helping with the treatments back then, doing them myself, the writing and the image research and layouts, but I was also the post producer, doing that with Kirsten. And at the time, like I knew little of post. So like we were just kind of like all just throwing ourselves in the fire and just kind of figuring it out on the fly.
Okay, and this next one I'm going to combine because it's kind of asking the same thing. But this person is asking, like, how does a student go about obtaining an internship? And then what kinds of entry-level positions can aspiring directors look at to get experience?
So we do have an internship program. I believe it's for certain windows of the year. I can get you guys more details on that. But we do have, general inquiries email that you can send us your cover letter and resume, and then we'll take a look, and that goes to our head of HR. And, so we'll bring on interns, and they'll kind of circulate within the different divisions within the company. Other entry-level positions, our office PA position, again, which you can just send us your email and resume. I'm not sure what our current hiring status is at the moment, but that's a great way just to kind of get in with the company and meet everyone and see how it works. That's literally how I started out of college. I was an office PA for 2+ years at a company called HSI, which is where Paul and Kirsten were before I then became Paul's creative assistant, which I did for a couple of years. So, I mean, that's you typically, how a lot of people start out and just kind of meet people, or you can try and get in with one of the crews working on set as a freelance PA. If you're interested in line producing, that's a really great, linear path, starting as a set PA, or PAing for one of the crews and then working your way up to coordinator, supervisor, line producer. So I've seen a lot of people, follow that path.
And I can second that too. And just so you're clear, you're probably like, how does Shari know so much about Prettybird? So Pipelines actually works out of the Prettybird office. It's a Prettybird founded company. So I know people are like, why are you second? How do you even know Mike? But that's how, because I've worked with him for the last 7 years. But anyway, to that point, we do have a summer internship program, some summers, but it doesn't hurt, to Mike's point, to send out your resume. The worst that can happen is we don't have anything at that time, but it's not to say that we don't have anything in the future. So you should never not shoot your shot because you think we're not hiring.
And I also just want to just add real quickly, when looking at directors, like, again, for us, like, again, great ideas can come from anyone. And, we try not to overlook anyone. Like some of the directors on our roster started out as PAs. Rami Hashash was an office PA, and now he's a director on our roster doing commercials and music videos. And we actually developed and produced our first scripted series through VENTURELAND with him, which was Kirby Jenner. My first in-house writer and image researcher designer, Ian Schwartz, is a director on our roster. So again, it's another path.
Absolutely. And I can't speak to other production companies, but Prettybird, we do have a full-time PA program. So our PAs are in-house Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So they are full-time, but I know some production companies, it may be part-time or on an availability type basis, but Prettybird specifically, we have full-time PAs Monday through Friday. And I know it's rolling. So like, again, it doesn't hurt to send your resume. It's just helpful to have that pool. So when they are hiring for PAs, you're already in the mix. So there's no specific time when they're looking for PAs. So definitely shoot your shot. To Mike's point, I can't emphasize that enough, is quite easily the easiest way to get into the industry, to work for a reputable production company. And it's what you make it. If you get here and you network and you ask questions and you have a positive attitude and you're like, let's do this, even for the task that you may not thoroughly enjoy, they notice that, and that's how you move up, and that's how you get opportunities to go on set and et cetera. So just throwing that out there because I think that's very important to mention. The next question says, you talked about ad agencies hiring by brands and bidding you. How does the process change in regards to music videos rather than commercials?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for music videos, the process is a little different. Rather than an ad agency, you're working with the record labels and the artist management. So typically what happens is, the label will reach out to our music video EP, with a track. Sometimes there might be a brief from the artist or their management on the kind of video that they're looking for. But more often than not, it's kind of a blank slate in terms of, the ideation, coming up with the concept. Sometimes the director might already have a relationship with that artist, so they're kind of just working, one-on-one together. But yeah, we'll seed it out to one director or multiple directors to ideate on that track. And the treatments compared to commercial treatments are usually much shorter. It's usually just more like, okay, this is what the concept is. You don't necessarily go into so much detail about like the tone and the production logistics and all that. And then we'll submit it to the label, and ultimately they're sharing it with the artist. And there's a commissioner at the label, and they're the ones who are ultimately awarding the job. But once we do get a job awarded, then much like we would on a commercial, then again, we hire, a freelance crew who's in charge of actually handling the physical production. So, the line producer, the DPs, all that stuff.
And we actually did, Haley, I don't know if this is still on the CSUA library or Spotify, but we actually did a session with our EP of music videos, Candace Dragonis, last year. And she went into detail about, she showed a couple of music videos that we won awards for, and just the entire creative process that goes into music videos specifically. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I'm sure Haley's going to drop something in the chat of where you can watch or listen to that session. It was really good. And that'll kind of talk to the music video aspect of Prettybird. Next to that music segue, this person is a music student as well as a film student. What opportunities are there for someone who is familiar with both industries?
Well, there's a whole industry out there for, creating original scores for commercials, and of course, film and TV, as well as, there's companies out there for licensing tracks. So, there's tons of opportunities. More often than not, when it comes to music, the ad agency is the one who's in charge of handling that. They might look for the director's input, and the director might have ideas on a specific track, or if they feel like it's, worth creating an original score, or choosing something from a library, or if it's a track that we want to license. So there's different paths for, how we get the music. More often than not, it's usually kind of budget. That decision's determined based on budget and schedule. To score a piece can be kind of costly, but there are, lots of music houses out there that's what they specialize in, is, creating, original music for advertising. So yeah, I would just kind of do some research, look to see what those companies what those companies are. There's a lot of them out there.
Thank you. And we have time for one last question before I get you guys out of here. Last question is, do you have advice for directors who have a reel and are looking to pitch for music videos and commercials with bigger budgets and clients?
I mean, I would just hit up every production company you can think of, just bombard them, just send them your reel. I would reach out to do the same thing with all the record labels, see if you can try and find out who the video commissioners are over there and see if you can kind of schedule, you know, just a time to talk with them. If nothing else, just share your reel. If there's, you know, independent music artists out there, you know, just see if they have like any sort of budget at all to do a video. Or again, I mean, I get like the desire to work on bigger budgets, so it's, you know, it's kind of hard. You know, it's so competitive out there and there's only so many videos and, you know, to go around. But, you know, if you have a great reel, you know, it's going to speak for itself. So yeah, I would just kind of, you just got to go out there and just kind of hit everyone up.
Shoot your shot.
There have been directors, you know, that we've signed that have sent us, you know, just cold emails, you know, and we, you know, they weren't on our radar, you know, and then, you know, we just were blown away by their work.
And, you know, to that point, you never know what a production company is looking for. Don't assume that you know what they're looking for either. And the very worst thing that could happen, is they don't hit you back, or they say, we're not looking to assign anyone right now. That's literally the worst thing that could happen, and life is not over. And at least you can say that you shot your shot. And who knows, again, if an opportunity is going to come up in the future where you maybe look what they're looking for in that moment. You just never know. So I can't stress being proactive enough. Like, if you take your craft seriously, you believe in your work, there's somebody out there who will feel the same, but you have to get the work out there first, okay? So that's my little several cents, okay? So just thank you, Mike. You are so dope. You know, I love having you as a part of the session. You're so incredible at your job. Really good at your job. You care about this work so much, and you're so talented. And I just really respect you and admire you, and thank you for being a part of this and sharing the wealth. It's so beneficial to, I mean, me, I've been working with you for years and I learn something new every time I have you on. So I'm just so happy that you took the time out. This man is so busy, you have no idea. So
I really appreciate that. And thank you everyone for giving me your time.
And lastly, Haley has dropped the CSUEA information in the chat. So please follow them for more events like this. I think our next panel is in another month. We try and do as much of these as possible, focusing on a different area of entertainment. Follow Pipelines. Pipelines will be launching in a month. It is completely free for students and talent to start connecting to jobs and training across tech, entertainment, and creative. So you don't want to miss that launch. Follow us on Instagram, check out our website, hit me or Haley up with questions. We're very close partners. Thank you to the CSUEA as always. I'm going to stop running my mouth now, but I love this session. Thank you again, Mike. And thank you to everybody who took the time out to invest in your craft and learn something today. Okay. And go out there and kill it. Okay. Happy Friday.